thing from each of the documents, right? So this is picking up where we left off last time, and the document we had left off on, I think, was document D, where we were talking about the mutiny that we saw. Now, I just want to make reference, and if you take a look at document C and you take a look at document D, those two documents have a conversation with one another. What do I mean by that? I mean that the material in document C and D is complementary to one another. How are documents C and D similar, or how do they converse with one another, or what is the conversation that those documents are having with one another? Because they're similar, but they're mirror reflections of one another. Yeah.
One of them's a view from the leadership of the army, and the other one's like a normal soldier. So
okay, so what can you get from that? From that conversation, the upper muckety mucks versus the low level grunt. What can you get from that? If you're considering those ideas.
I guess you can get, how the army was led and how people reacted.
Well, how was it led? And how was it? See, you're saying you can get this, but you're not saying what this is. And that's, guys, that is part and parcel to a lot of people's issues here. You're saying, well, it demonstrates how they lived. But you haven't said how they lived. And so there's where you're kind of falling short.
Okay, it's obvious that they don't like the leadership.
Well, it's obvious from document D that they don't like the leadership, but if you look at document C, he's enamored with the leadership. Huh? More powerful like the Hulk? Go ahead, Kramer. So he's demonstrating frustration. So if you're doing a compare contrast between C and D, the similarity is the frustration level. Okay? What's the contrast? Go ahead.
Document D, the soldier just wants to go home and they're not going to do any more work, and C, George Washington just wants to kiss butt and get hired.
Oh, kiss butt and get higher?
Like
really?
He wants to get higher up in the ranks.
Let's think about the words we use. All right,
he wants to get higher up in the ranks.
Okay, but guys, take a look at document C where he says, I volunteer to do my, and I'm paraphrasing, but I volunteer to do my part for king and country. Yet in document D, 4 years later, you've got soldiers who are saying, we are doing no more duty here. What's the conversation that's happening there? What's happening over that 4-year time span? Are they? See, now we're making a leap. Now we're making an analytical leap of faith. Are they losing their British identity? Explain how. Explain why. Go ahead. Who's they? Fair? They thought it was fair? Okay. So you could make an argument that the treatment of American soldiers under British command drove a wedge between the Americans and the British. Indeed, at the beginning of the war, George Washington expresses what many Americans felt, a sense of loyalty to the English crown and a willingness to serve. Doc C. Yet, only 4 years later, soldiers were mutinying against British command and leaving their post. Doc D. Did you see how I just did that? I made a point and I used evidence to support it, and I used the evidence to explain how and why that occurred. Because I was considering the documents. Now, look, I'll tell you right now, and if you could follow me. College Board sets up these document-based questions purposefully. There is somebody or a group of people sitting in a room deciding which document goes where. What document's going to be document A? What document's going to be document B? Think about that. These documents don't magically appear on a page. Somebody has to sit down and plan out which document goes where. And they purposefully put documents together. So document A is always what I call the catch-all document. It's the document where if you look at the question and you don't know anything about the question because you don't remember it, if you look at that document, it will at least make you think about 3 or 4 things. So if you look at that map, if you look at those 2 maps, you should be thinking Treaty of Paris, Proclamation Line, the Ohio River Valley, Braddock, the strategy, Fort Necessity, all that stuff, all those specific vocabulary terms that are in your homework that you're responsible for, those things should come streaming into your head. By looking at that one document, it makes you think about a lot of things. Documents B and C usually talk to one another. Or document C and D will talk to one another. But the documents are set next to one another so that they have a conversation. If I have a conversation, the first document reveals one thing, but the second document in the pairing kind of reflects either the opposite or a change or something to get you to think about the 2 documents in tandem. Does that make sense? Now, always, maybe D and E are conversant as well. Maybe E converses with B. Okay? But they pick these documents on purpose. Now, there's always one document in the list. We'll just call it the F document. But the F document is always the screwball document. They always put one document in the list of documents that you look at it and you go, what is this about? I don't understand this. It doesn't seem to fit in with the rest of the material. Or it's not easy to use. Do you know what you do with the F document? What? You don't use it. Ignore it. If you stumble now, if you can use it, if you're a more sophisticated writer, or you've got a good beat on the material and you know how to use that document, then for God's sakes, go ahead and use it. But if you don't know how to use it, if you look at it and go, I don't know what's going on here, then don't use that document. And then you always have the end document, the last document. The capstone or endgame document. That's kind of like, what did it all result in? The end point. Okay? So if you know going in that you're going to see 8 to 9 to 10 documents with a document that makes you think about a lot of things, that documents are paired, that there's one screwball document, and that the last document's kind of the conclusion, then you can better approach those documents. Okay. Take a look at document E, right? Document E. Is that the Thomas Barnard document? Okay. So, now again, a tip, author, time and place, main idea, purpose. That's how you get something. How do I get something from the document? You A-tip the document. You think about who the author is. You think about the time and place. You think about the date. You think about the main idea. You think about the purpose. A-tip the document, and it will it will kind of unlock what's in the document for you. So, do we know who Thomas Barnard is? No! So that doesn't give us a clue as to, anything we can use in the document. He's a Massachusetts clergyman. I don't know if that helps us either. But look at the date. What's the date?
1763.
1763 is a mile marker year. Why is it a mile marker year? Lots of significant things happened in 1763, but for our purposes, that's when it ends. 1763. There's a lot of things that happened in 1763. You need to know that date. The end of the French and Indian War, the Treaty of Paris, the Proclamation Line, the British Orders in Council, all that stuff happens in 1763. So it's a change year. So what's the main idea behind this sermon? What's Barnard saying here? First of all, ask yourself, is it generally positive or generally negative or neutral? It's positive. It's definitely positive. How do we know that? He even exclaims, because there's an exclamation point, which means he's shouting, auspicious day! And that's how that should be read. Auspicious day! And even if you don't know what auspicious means, he's generally excited. It means really good day! He's generally excited. Why is he excited?
They won the war.
They won the war! So what? So they won the war. What does Barnard convey through his sermon? What's the main idea here? We won the war. So what? Don't look at me, because it's not going to magically appear on my forehead in neon lights. Go ahead.
Basically, all have freedom now.
Freedom! What, to dance around a fire, crack each other's skulls open and feast on the goo inside? Or freedom to do what?
Freedom from.
Not freedom from, freedom to. Freedom to do something. Not freedom from anything. Freedom to do something. Go.
Freedom to expand and be American.
Expand and be American. So get larger?
Like expand westward, create trade, make money.
That that the possibilities for the future are limitless. The land out west is opportunity. Trade is opportunity. I'm excited because now that we've gotten the French off the continent, the doors are wide open for American opportunity to go where we want, do what we want, trade with whom we want, and make as much money as humanly possible. This is indeed an auspicious day. Did people get that from that document? Because that's what that document's about. What did people take from it that they thought was important? John. That's something else really good that I got from that document. Despite all the problems, despite all the issues, we've put all that aside because we won. And so, yes, we're loyal. Despite mutinies and whatnot. And you know what? Think back to that previous document. That's the connector between D and E. What's the connector between D and E?
That even though the American soldiers were angry and they started mutinying, that
Look at the byline of document E, look at the byline of document D. What is similar about them? Massachusetts! There you go. So you had soldiers from Massachusetts who were mutinying in 1759, 1763, the war is over, iggity-aggity ook, all is forgiven. And we've put all those differences aside because America and Britain are going to march arm in arm into the future, and specifically into the West. Because land equals money. Land equals wealth. And wealth equals freedom. So when you talk about freedom, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the acquisition of land to be independently wealthy and self-sufficient. Me, I'm responsible. Liberty, freedom. Stay out of my business. Okay? So document F. Document F is a great example of a document you do not need to read. Just look at the byline of the document. British Orders in Council. So what, without even reading that document, what do you know is going to be in there? Go.
Taxes.
Taxes. Take a look at the document. Take a look at it. Is there talk of taxes? Is there talk of revenue? Is there talk of regulation? Absolutely. So we know, based on prior knowledge, we know because we've studied this, because it was a vocabulary term or whatever that we looked at, we know, seeing British Orders in Council, we know that that's going to be a British statement of policy talking about changing colonial policy, to tax more, to regulate more, to more strictly enforce laws. Now, if you wanted to get, a little snippet of idea from document D, or from document F, okay? You could say something similar to this. The construct would sound like this. Despite their differences, Americans at the end of the French and Indian War believed in an optimistic future. Indeed, Reverend Thomas Barnard spoke of the opportunity for the children of New England, quote unquote, to move forward into the future with positive, quote, prospects for the future, unquote, Doc E. However, that optimism was short-lived as the British decided in 1763 to alter the way they governed their colonies, recognizing that they needed more revenue, and that through quote, neglect, connivance, and fraud, unquote, Americans had not been paying their fair share. Britain decided in their Orders in Council to take a more strict approach to the governance of the colonies, Doc F. You see how I did that? I didn't say Doc F is the British Orders in Council, and here's what it says, quote, blah, 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 unquote. I used choice little phrases to reinforce the point I was trying to make. Okay? And I know in no way said, in Doc F it says, or in Doc E it says. Now you can say, Massachusetts Reverend Thomas Barnard said, or you could say British Parliament declared in their Orders in Council. That's fine, but don't go saying in Doc F it says. Okay?
So when you're done with the document, you just put like a little side note that says document.
can use a document more than once. You're not limited by how often you can use a document, because there are some documents that you can use for the political, the economic, and the ideological. As a matter of fact, document F is a document that talks about politically the end of salutary neglect and enforcement of regulations like the Navigation Acts and the passing of several revenue acts. It emphasizes economics in that it talks about the need for revenue, the need to get that revenue from the American colonies, and the need to place taxes on the colonies that they had not previously had before. And it also hits on the ideological in that this is a change in philosophy of the way of governing the colonies. It's a difference in the way they view the Americans. The British, at the end of the French and Indian War, believed that the Americans had not done their fair share and needed to do more. And the British Orders in Council addresses that. So document F can be used in all three areas, however you want to use it. Does that make sense? Okay. Anybody want to provide, does anybody have anything more for document F? All right, we need to move on. Document G. My friends, document G is the screwball document. Why is it the screwball document? Take a look at it and tell me why it's the screwball document. The document that just doesn't seem like it's in the right place. There's something screwy about this document where you read it and you go, what? A-tip the document. Who's the author? What's the time and place? Look at the place. Look at the author. Look at the place. Think about the main idea. What's the screwballiness of this document? Who's he? Okay, why is that a screwball argument? What do we already know? They are getting restless. We know that they don't like these taxes. We know that they don't like regulation on the Navigation Acts. We know that they don't like the Vice Admiralty courts and the writs of assistance and all that other specific vocabulary stuff. We know the Americans don't like that. Yet Ben Franklin is sitting here saying, you guys have to cool it off. You guys have to be calm. We gotta all be a couple of Fonzies here and be cool. But why is it so screwbally that Ben Franklin is the one saying that? What do we know Ben Franklin will do in the future? Anybody? I mean, for God's sakes, you've been living in America now for 15, 16 years. Surely you've heard of Ben Franklin and know what the cut of his jib is. Go ahead.
Declaration of Independence.
He's one of the authors of the Declaration of Independence, the ultimate document that demonstrates disloyalty to the crown. Yet in 1765, he's saying, oh, wait a minute, guys, we got to be loyal. We got to, everybody's got to get along here. That's why when you look at that document, you go, what? I thought Ben Franklin was a revolutionary. Now, the more sophisticated student will recognize what's going on here. Can anybody recognize what's happening here? I don't think he's the villain, now I've got them right where I want them. No, I don't think that's the case. But thank you for contributing an idea. Go ahead, what's happening?
He's trying to get better standing with the British government because he's writing, making it look like he's...
I've got to ask the question, is he making it look like he's loyal or is he loyal? For what, to what end? If he's disloyal, why is he in England? Because that's the place, London. He's writing from London.
He's trying to make everyone else cool it and be loyal, and then these taxes and things might go away.
Okay? So what is he? Is he arguing a revolutionary approach or a pragmatic approach? He's being, yeah, that second one, what you just said. Do you know what pragmatic means? See, that's the problem. You guys have got to elevate your level of language. You've got to elevate the level of discourse. You've got to be able to not only write at a college level, read at a college level, you've got to be able to think at a college level. The word pragmatic means practical. Do what works. What would be the opposite of pragmatic? Huh? Well, yeah, revolutionaries do tend to be unpragmatic. The opposite of pragmatist is idealist. Someone who's dreamy, who kind of shoots for the moon. Okay? Franklin is being a pragmatist here. What's up? A pragmatist is a realist. Yes. A pragmatist is a realist. Franklin is a pragmatist. He's a realist here. Why is Franklin in London? I see the same people with their hands up all the time, and then I see people sitting on their hands. So if he's negotiating, what is his job in 1765? He's ambassador. Yes. He is the American ambassador to Parliament. He is America's representative to Parliament. Well, who died and made him ambassador? Well, nobody died, but who made him ambassador? Who? Well, how in the world would the colonies have been able to come to the decision to make him an ambassador?
Stamp Act Congress?
This is the Stamp Act Congress. That's why I'm saying this is a sophisticated document. Because you should be referencing the Stamp Act Congress here. That the Americans, idealistically, are working together, united, in a way they had not previously been united before. Why is it important that Ben Franklin is mentioned in this document with the American colonies united? He was the first one to suggest it in the Albany Congress in 1754. So in 1754, when Franklin says, hey, we should all be united and working together, everybody says, no, we can't do that. Yet here we are in 1765, Ben Franklin is there, and he's the representative of a united colonial effort. So what causes that unity? The war? The Stamp Act. The decisions made in the Orders in Council unify the Americans in a way that nothing else ever could. Americans, while Virginians and Pennsylvanians and New Yorkers may not have much in common, they do have one thing in common. They all hate the British Orders in Council. And that's what unifies them. And that reflects an alteration, a change. Yeah.
So if they're all unified, why is Ben Franklin talking about keeping the statement?
Take a look at document H. What's that? It doesn't look very good. Is document H generally positive or negative?
Negative.
It's negative. It's got skulls and crossbones on it, for God's sake. And look, document G talks to document H. Ben Franklin, we know, was originally from Philadelphia. He's a printer from Philadelphia. He's a printer from Philadelphia. He's writing in document G to a guy named John Hughes, whoever that may be. I'm sure he, sat down and wrote 16 Candles and Pretty in Pink. Nobody really? No 80s movie fans out there? No Breakfast Club fans? Come on! All right. So anyway, so he's writing to John Hughes, whoever that is, but more than likely, we can presuppose that John Hughes lives in, where in Pennsylvania? It's a big state. Philadelphia. We can assume that. And now we look at document H. Ben Franklin in document G is telling the people back home, you guys need to cool down, cool down, cool down, cool down. But what is document H? What is it? In and of itself, what is it? Not what does it mean. What is document H? It's a newspaper. Wait a minute. What was Ben Franklin?
A printer.
A printer. From where?
Philadelphia.
Where is this paper from? It's from Pennsylvania. And more likely than not, from...
Philadelphia.
More likely than not, whose newspaper is this?
Ben Franklin.
Ben Franklin's. It's Ben Franklin's newspaper. Dun, dun, dun! Jacob. John Hughes is not trying to make Ben Franklin look like the bad guy. Ben Franklin is trying to get John Hughes to cool down the Stamp Act protests.
But then a month later.
Really? We're going to go up to that level? Dial it back. The language. This is not speak how you feel. But yes, you've got Ben Franklin in London saying everybody needs to be cool, and yet you've got his newspaper back in Philadelphia printing this negative screed against the Stamp Act. So what's happening here? What gives?
The Americans are making it harder for him to try to get it repealed.
Okay, definitely Franklin is over in London trying to solve this without any negative consequences. And what the Stamp Act protesters, what the Sons of Liberty, and since it's a newspaper, what other specific outside information should that inspire? Colonial News and Information, Committees of Correspondence. The Sons of Liberty, the Committees of Correspondence, the Stamp Act protests are making it more difficult for Ben Franklin to solve this problem in London. But Ben Franklin also has to keep in mind he's got to go back to Philadelphia. And he can't be seen as because what's happening to Americans who are enforcing the Stamp Act or seen as loyal to Britain or seen as being on the side of Britain? What's happening to them?
The Sons of Liberty are attacking them.
The Sons of Liberty are attacking them, tarring and feathering them. Do you think Ben Franklin wants to go back to Philadelphia and be seen as the tool of the British? He could lose his business. He could lose his prosperity. He could lose his freedom. So what Franklin is doing is he's playing both sides. He's got his foot in the loyal British camp by trying to negotiate an end to the Stamp Act crisis, but he's also printing newspapers that show he doesn't like the Stamp Act. Two-faced is too broad an extreme. But he's definitely complex. That's the best I'll say. Ben Franklin is a complex pragmatist. So what do we get from document H? What do we learn about Americans from document H? Are they easily influenced? Is that what you get here? I mean, if that's what you get, how do you get that? You're correct in that this is going to sway American public opinion. You're correct. Okay? That these newspapers are going to go, and the committees of correspondence that sends them out are going to go a long way toward tainting American opinion against the British. Absolutely. Okay? I'll agree with that. Just got to make sure you explain that idea out. What else does this reveal about the Americans and their attitudes and their feelings and their, yeah.
The Stamp Act is killing us.
Well, I mean, that's the skull and crossbones. You're being too literal. It's almost like you're copying the document. So what does that mean?
That means that it's kind of strangling the economy.
Okay, that it's hurting us economically, that it's infringing on our liberties, that it's infringing on our freedoms, it's infringing on our God-given rights. God-given rights? God-given rights like what? Life, liberty, property. Oh, Enlightenment ideas. Demonstrates the Enlightenment. Okay? Now, how many people feel overwhelmed by what we just did? Good. And it did. It took way too long to do it. My friends, it's okay. If you feel overwhelmed, look, you should have looked around you because guess what? Everybody felt overwhelmed. And that's fine. That is fine to feel overwhelmed. The idea is we need to show you what the goal is. And I'm showing you what the goal is now so that we can work towards that. By getting one thing from each of the documents, that helps us toward that goal. If you can just get one thing from a document, that's great. We got lots of things from these documents. We got a ton of things from these documents. We went whole hog on these documents. But if you can just get one thing out of that document that you can somehow use and put into an essay that you've already planned out, then you're going to be better than 80% of the essays I'm seeing. Because 80% of the essays I'm seeing nationwide are threes. Which means that they either quote whole swaths of document without putting any outside information in there, or they just say what the document is without any kind of analysis. That's a 3. A general essay that really says nothing. That's a 3. And in my class, that translates to a C. Because that's the average. That's what average student nationwide is doing. You're not going to get a 9 for doing nothing. You're not going to get an 8 for doing nothing. Okay? That's what I'm saying. I'm not going to let you fail. I'm not saying you won't fail, because I've had students fail. But I'm not going to let you fail. But then again, not everybody's walking out of here with a gift wrap day either. All right? Average grade in this class, years past, has been 79. As a matter of fact, I just calculated the average for period 2A, 1B, and 3B. I lumped it all together and got a mean. The mean, 79. Right where we need to be. Well, actually, it's right where America is. I need you to do better. I don't want you to have a 79. I don't want you to have a 78. I want you to do better than the national average. I want you to do better than the county average. The county average is on the pass rate 3, 4, 5 on the test. The county average, I think, in APUS is 43%. Yeah, I want you to do better. I mean, and we've done better in the past for years and years and years. 48, 49, 50%. So that's what we're working towards, folks. This is a process. You're not going to get it all right now. So if you felt overwhelmed, that's okay. I'm not expecting miracles in the next day or so. But I need to show you what the goal is so that you know what to shoot for. And you worked through the process. I showed you how I worked through the process, how I had conversations with the documents and got stuff from the documents, how I used the author, how I used the time, how I used the place, how I used the main ideas to make leaps of faith, analytical leaps of faith. Okay? All right. If I could please have the document-based question back, and if I could please have the sheet where you got one thing from each of the documents. This is not so much going to be graded for content as it's going to be graded for you sat through this process. Does that make sense, Schmitty? Okay? Because I'm not expecting you to get it right away. But I want you to have had this experience. Okay. Person at the front separated into two separate piles. Good. Come on, peeps. I get it. Come on, man. Take it one thing at a time here, one thing at a time, one thing at a time. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Now, you have in front of you 3 samples of answers that students wrote in 2004 to answer the DBQ you just looked at. I'd like you to read the first one. It's 1A, 1 of 3. I think it's 1A, 1 of 3. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Now, what I provided for you is a copy of the rubric on the front. It is the rubric. It is a variation of the rubric that I use. So everything that's graded in here, in terms of writing, uses some variation of that rubric. Okay? Use that rubric. What are we looking for? We're looking for, in its simplest form, we're looking for thesis, evidence, analysis, how, why, explanations, organization. Does it make sense? Okay? Thesis, evidence, analysis, explanation, organization, and does it make sense? What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to read that first essay and tell me what you would give it. First of all, what you do is you decide whether it's a high essay, a medium essay, a low essay, or an incompetent essay. If it's a high essay, is it an 8 or a 9? If it's a medium essay, is it a 5, 6, or 7? If it's a low essay, is it a 2, 3, or 4? So first determine whether you think it's high, medium, or low, and then once you've determined whether it's high, medium, or low, assign it a number. Yeah. No. looking at is found on the collegeboard.com website under exams, U.S. history. This is the 2004 DBQ that you can find online. So this is just me sitting here while they're reading. Puppet show. I can do imitations. I can do some magic, dancing. We should really have some entertainment Phyllis right here. This is brought to you by How many people are having difficulty reading it? Everybody's got their hands up. Welcome to my world, people.
Handwriting's terrible.
The handwriting is terrible. You need to make sure that your handwriting, if it is terrible, is better. Make it easy for the reader to read. Yeah,
this
at
is
least,
just-
yeah,
it's
exactly. At least make
tiny.
it large, sloppy hand. Look at that handwriting. That's terrible.
Very tiny.
And you know what? And I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. When I grade these essays down in Louisville in June, if I can't read it, I just give it a 3. I don't care what it says. If I can't read it, 3. Moving on. Huh? Yeah. What's that?
The essay in the back is really ugly with all the crossings.
No one writes in pencil. You have to write in pen on the essays.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, guys, I mean, you got to understand, I read 1,500 of these things.
You don't write in pencil, you write in pen. You write in pen, not pencil.
On the AP test, you have to write pen. Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, whether you're done with 1A, 1 of 3 or not, you can usually tell from the introduction what it's going to get. And from this, I can tell from the introduction what it's going to get. How many of you put this in the high category? The first one, 1A, 1 of 3. How many of you put it in the high category? Good. How many of you put it in the medium category? How many of you put it in the low category? All right, so we had about half and half. Did anybody make it an incompetent essay? 0 to 1 essay? All right, good. Well, it's not high and it's not incompetent. All right. So the people who put it in the medium category, did you give it a 7, a 6, a 5? Okay. Everybody who put it in the medium category gave it a 5. The people who put it in the low category, did you give it a 4, a 3, a 2? All right. Most people gave it a 3 who put it in the low category. This essay is a 5. And let me show you why. The French and Indian War had great effect on the politics, economic, and ideology of the American colonies. That is your thesis. Is it a good thesis?
No.
No. No. It is a terrible thesis. It had a great effect. What exactly was that effect? If you explained what that effect was, that would make it a superior thesis. But as it stands, it's a borderline humdrum thesis. As a matter of fact, this essay is what is called the 4-5 essay. It is the borderline essay. It is a classic 4-5 because the thesis is terrible. Because all it does is really parrot back what the question is. Does it have evidence? Scan the document. Just look at it. Does it have specific evidence? I see lots of proper nouns. George Washington, Bulldog Braddock, Fort Necessity, Pontiac's Rebellion, English Parliament. And that's just in the first paragraph. There's 4 specific pieces of evidence right there. I don't know how they're used, but I see it. Is there analysis? Is there explanation of how and why things occur? Where do you see, and if you find it, where do you see it? Just in that in the first content paragraph, the political repercussions. I saw the word huge too and nearly fell over. And quite frankly, being as biased, and this is what's called subjective grading, my friends. It's how I feel at that moment. If I saw that word huge, even though this may have been a 5, I'd give it a 4. Because it's unsophisticated writing. It's very simplistic. Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
They said that it was a huge plus, but they didn't really go on to explain why.
Yeah, I saw
Our
you.
soldiers was a huge plus.
Yeah, he gave our soldiers was a huge plus. Wow, that's just grammatically terrific. But look, just if you read this first paragraph, the political repercussions of the war were quite varied. The military experience it gave to our soldiers was a huge plus when fighting the British some years later. Had George Washington not transferred into General Edward Bulldog Braddock, he might not have ever gotten the field experience at Fort Necessity, which is incorrect. Fort Necessity came before he was transferred into Braddock's command. Another political result of the war was the westward expansion of settlers. Okay, that's great. With the removal of the French influence of the Ohio River Valley string of forts, the settlers were free to expand into Indian territory. Without saying it, they're using Doc A. They're using those 2 maps. Yeah, go ahead.
Could they have said that and then, like, right after spring comes to Doc A?
Bingo. And that's what I would recommend you do. Absolutely. That's what I would recommend you do. You are correct. Because that makes it easier for the reader. This resulted in Pontiac's rebellion and the restrictions on where to settle and addition of more troops to the region. So without saying it, they're talking about Pontiac's rebellion, the proclamation of 1763, and that's how I would punch this up. Instead of saying restrictions on where they could settle, I would say proclamation of 1763, restricting where settlers could go. And soldiers housed in troops to the region. And I would throw in quartering act in there. Yeah.
You didn't got points for resulting and resolving stuff.
No. No. This is not a spelling exercise. Although, if it is misspelled or grammatically incorrect or has significant syntax errors that interfere with the comprehension of the essay, That's in the low category. So if I can't understand it, if it sounds like you took words and just plopped them together and said, there's a sentence, then that's a problem. If I can't understand it, that's a problem. Doesn't matter what you know. But there is explanation here. They're talking about reasons. They're talking about the results. They're explaining how. They're explaining why. The analysis is what saves this from being a fourth. And they actually do a better job in the subsequent paragraphs of explaining how and why. It has a thesis. It's got evidence. Not a lot, but it's got evidence. It's got some analysis. It's not great, but it's there. Is it organized? The question asks, political, economic, ideological. Look at the paragraphs, the first word of each content paragraph, or the first phrase of each content paragraph. Political, economic, ideological. It's organized. Does it make sense? Generally, the errors, let me see what it says on the rubric. The errors that don't seriously detract from the quality of the essay, it's a 5. A very weak 5, but a 5. And you know what a 5 gets you? 5 gets you a 3. Why? Because we rock it all the time on multiple choice. We always are above the national average on multiple choice questions. National average is 46 out of 80 multiple choice questions. We're always getting about 50 out of 80 multiple choice questions. If you get a 50 out of 80 on the multiple choice and a 3 on your essays, you know what you wind up getting? 2. But if you get 50 out of 80 on the multiple choice and a 4 or a 5 on your essays, now you've got a 3. And that's the dividing line. That's the difference between those that get the credit and those that don't. It's right there. All right. Let's take a look at the second essay. I'll tell you what, I'll read it with you, okay? And we'll see if we can decipher what this says. During the course of the years 1754 to 1763, the British Empire was engaged in the third of 3 wars with rival France. I already know, right from there, that kid knows what they're talking about because he put it into context. He put the French and Indian War into the context of the War of Jenkins's Ear, Queen Anne's War, and the previous wars that came before. This kid knows his history, right from the first sentence. This conflict, which would come to be known as the French and Indian War and the 7 Years' War, would be played out entirely on the North American continent, during which the colonials would fight actively on the side of the British. It would be this conflict that would serve as the turning point in colonial British relations, specifically in the economic regard, which in turn would have profound impact in the political and ideological realms. What did you think of that introduction?
Pretty nice.
Pretty good.
It is written in a more sophisticated manner. What about the thesis? Is there a thesis?
Yes, but they mixed the order up.
That's fine. It is okay that they mixed the order up because what they said was the economic was more important than the political and ideological. As a matter of fact, they're saying that the economic impacted the political and ideological. That demonstrates sophistication. Now, it doesn't say how, it doesn't preview how or why the economics were better than the political or the ideological, or how it influenced it. And if it had how in there as a preview, that would be a superior thesis. This conflict, which begins, it's written in the present tense, so I've got a problem with it already. But it doesn't detract from the understanding of the essay. This conflict, which begins in earnest in 1754, would take place only 20 years before the Revolution. However, colonials at this point are not only content with British rule, but also eagerly willing to fight to protect it. Doc C. There's George Washington writing that I'm willing to serve king and country, without this kid saying, document C is George Washington writing a letter to Edward Braddock saying, I wish to fight for king and country. They effectively use that document. This is crucial in that, this is crucial. So now they're explaining how and why this piece of evidence is important. This is crucial in that it marks the event as the turning point. Before this, and for a brief time afterward, Doc E, colonials embraced British rule. The events after, however, will have profound negative effect on British colonial relations. But it doesn't say how. Also significant is the experiences given to many colonial participants. I don't have her this period, I have her 2A, not 1B. Also significant is the experience given to many colonial participants that will later prove valuable in the Revolution, although I'd like to know what those experiences specifically are. As well as the initial rumblings of discontent. Doc D, that's the mutiny. That will lay the foundation for later protests. The immediate result of the war was superficially positive. Britain was granted all the land east of the Mississippi and as far north as Canada, Doc A. Fearful of Indian attack as well as possible Spanish intervention, the Crown issued the Proclamation Line of 1763, which forbade the colonists of moving west of the Appalachians. The idea was to use the newly won lands as a buffer zone between the colonials and the Spanish and the Indians. This did not sit well with the colonials, however, who felt that because they had fought the French for that land, they should have the right to settle it. While there were no reports of violence over the issue, it is clear that this marks the first significant show of discontent of the colonies. So far, what do you think? High, medium, or low?
Medium.
High in content, but low in what?
And around the 18 ceiling of March, and that's really frustrating.
What's that? Okay, I don't know what you're saying. I can't hear you back there. You got to speak up because I can't hear you over the blower. Oh, okay. Yeah. How many people so far would put this in the high category? How many people would put it in the medium category? How many people would put it in the low category? Nobody. Good. It's not a low essay. It's a medium essay. It's a 7. It's a high medium It's a high medium. Yeah, it's a high medium. 7. Okay? Now, take a look at the last one. Haha! Hello. 1C, 1 of 6.
Whoa.
Holy crap, indeed.
What? How you can't do that?
Holy crap, indeed. Guys, what? Okay, why are we reacting in this way? Go ahead.
His essay is written out of the box.
It's okay. It can be written out of the box. It's fine. Yeah. It's 6 pages long. He obviously, and how do I know it's a he? You can tell from the handwriting. I know he and she handwriting. He's not writing big loop-de-loops with the hearts over the eye. No, this guy wrote 6 pages. and I can just scan it. I don't even need to read the sentences. I can scan it, and I can look at words. I can see lots of capital letters for proper nouns, that specific vocabulary. I can see words like antecedent and repulsive to liberty and hierarchical army. This guy not only knows the content, but has a sophisticated understanding of the English language and how to use it. For many years throughout the 1600s and early part of the 1700s, the British pursued a policy of salutary neglect, healthy non-interference toward its colonies. Britain enacted a series of navigation laws, but these attempts to regulate trade were minimally enforced. The colonists had a generally friendly attitude toward the British overall, since they enjoyed the benefits of an imperial relationship without accompanying restrictions. However, the relationship was dramatically altered by the French and Indian War of 1754-63. The course of the war itself significantly affected the political and ideological relationship of the colonists to their mother country, inasmuch as the colonists found the British imposition of restrictions and its hierarchical army to be repulsive to liberty, while the British saw the need for greater imperial control. However, it was the economic aftermath of the war which left Britain with a staggering war debt and a need to raise new colonial revenues that militated most heavily against colonial cooperation with the British. I don't need to read any further. I know what this kid got. What'd he get? That's a 9. Guys, it is obvious when you've got a command of the English language, you probably also have a command of the content as well. They go hand and glove because they speak to student attitude about learning. So while it may not seem fair that I can look at those big hunkin' vocabulary words and say, yeah, that's a 9, I can look at those big hunkin' vocabulary words and I can say, yeah, that's a 9. Because I know if they've got big hunkin' vocabulary words in their quiver, they probably also have a command of the content. He's writing really fast, so if he's writing 6 pages with that level of writing, I already know from the first paragraph he's going to get a 9. I'm going to read the rest of the essay because 95% of the other essays I'm reading are crap, and this will be a luxury. Guys, I read 1,500 essays last year. You know how many 9s I came across? 2. That's an Elvis sighting. Okay? So, guys, look, we're not trying to eat the whole cow. We're not trying to get you to write a 9 tomorrow. But I'm trying to show you that that is the level that is expected of you. That's what you want to shoot for. And if you shoot for the 9 and get the 4, well, you know what? That's a hell of a lot better than getting the 3 or the 2 that you would have normally gotten. So shoot for the moon. Shoot for the big goal. That's it. If we chase perfection, we can catch excellence. You shoot for the 9, we can get the 4 or the 5, which is really what you need. All right. Can you pass these forward? All right. Okay. So How much time do we have left here? About 5 minutes. Okay. I know your informants told you that things were coming. I said, I know your
Yeah.
informants told you
Yeah,
that
basically.
things were coming. But not for you.
Tell me.
You need to get better informants.
Yes, evil. Study.
Good. But now you know. Hey guys, I never give a quiz at the very beginning of a unit. I never give a quiz at the very end of a unit. They come in the middle. We're in the middle of a unit. We're in the middle of unit 2. So be looking for quizzes. They're coming. All right. Is this fired up here? Is this rolling? Is this rocking?
Yeah, it's on.
Oh, yeah, okay. All right.
Can you be my informant?
I will inform you from my informant.
Mike, who's your
informant?
I have people.
I'm gonna guess Morgan.
need your people.
I have a girlfriend.
Yeah,
Your people need to talk to my people. My people don't tell me anything.
So,
I talked to him. He should talk to you.
His girlfriend is also my informant.
okay,
really?
so,
I didn't talk to Morgan. She's
my friends.
section leader with me.
So really, with the Stamp Act being repealed in 1766, what we've uncovered here is a difference of opinion. And that difference of opinion is how should the American colonies be governed and how should decisions be made. The American colonists believe in what's called direct representation. They believe that the elected officials should be directly answerable to the voters. If you don't like something that your political representative has done, you can vote them out of office. There is a repercussion there. The British say that just because America doesn't have representation in Parliament doesn't mean that they're not being represented. They're virtually represented by members of Parliament. And so it's this difference of opinion that's going to get split more and more and more as we go down the road. Okay? So the Americans believe in direct, the British believe in virtual, and this is really a division that is never solved adequately. The British want more control over the Americans want to control their own destiny. The Stamp Act is repealed in 1766. Yet the following year, a new set of taxes is levied on the Americans. It's like, you repeal one bad law and replace it with another bad law. And it's amazing that the British looked at this and were shocked, I tells you, that there was colonial opposition. Now, this is called the Townsend Duties. And yes, you can have your laugh there, it says duties. Duties are taxes. And these are taxes on essentials: glass, lead, paint, paper, tea. Glass, lead? Why lead? Bullets and paint. Paper, tea. Who is this going to impact? Where are these taxes going to impact? Where?
Consumers.
Perhaps, but just anywhere in the colonies?
Larger cities.
Larger cities. And who in particular is dealing a lot with glass? What is glass used for?
The rum.
Huh?
The rum.
All right, we got to give up here, folks. Glass, man!